We're live now. Okay. Oh, what is that countdown?
Okay,
No?
I can see you. Can you hear me?
We are hearing you. So just your camera now needs to come in, and I'm hearing you.
Okay, well, okay, it looks like the camera came in. I mean, yeah, I can see myself.
Blue, we see it blue. We see a blue picture from you with the camera.
Well, on my phone, I can see you, and
I'm seeing you now.
Better now.
You're good now. We have arrived. Yes, you have arrived. You're live now.
I'm live, yes.
Okay. So because we come on late, we usually wait a few minutes for people to come on. There are about 11 people online already. We just give everybody a little time to log in. And welcome, Doc. Doc, how you pronounce your last name?
It's like a pie shell.
Pie shell.
Yeah, pie. Okay. Just like so you think of your favorite pie and you will always remember me.
Okay. No, I think DR.AN was easy because I originally thought you were DR.AN.
I am DR.AN.
Oh, so is Ann Peischel?
Yeah.
Peischel is your married name?
I'm not married.
Oh, okay.
So
nope. Dr. Ann Peischel.
Just call me DR.AN. And then that's the scary part. You can just call me Ann, okay?
All right. It's going to be easy to say DR.AN.
Yeah, that's easier. My last name, everybody kills it.
Okay. Well, we're very late today, but we're just waiting on a few people to log in.
Oh, that's we can go. Right. I don't mind.
Put it in the WhatsApp group. We're on live now. We're a little late. Yeah.
I'll have to figure out.
Normally, what will happen now, Doc? Do you see on your screen over here, live stream, all that? People are going to ask us questions. They're going to text us. So you and I will communicate with each other. And then they will text us. I don't know if you see it on your screen, and they're going to ask the questions. So
I don't see anything on my screen.
All right, don't worry about that. We are going to see the questions, and we're going to ask. So persons are going to ask us questions on the screen, and then I will read the questions, and then we'll answer them, and we'll also just talk about you share all of that knowledge that you have. So we have 17 people online so far, and usually when it reaches maybe about 40 persons, then we usually start off. But they are coming on 19 now online so far.
Okay.
We are very excited about this Kiko conversation. For a number of years, a lot of us have spoken about Kiko, but we have never really gotten the opportunity to be live here with somebody who knows everything about them.
Okay.
So we're at 20 persons now.
You know, I also did 2 YouTubes with a gentleman. It's the number 7 Stands Farm. 7 Stands Farm. And I've done 2 YouTubes with him specifically on Kiko's. All the back history, the bucks, everything.
Okay.
Find them and give them to your folks.
All right, that's good. Well, yes, we can certainly share that information afterwards, because we have like WhatsApp groups and we have farm groups and so forth, and we'll share those information as we go along. So Jamaicans we don't know anything about Kikos really, and the breed really just came to Jamaica very recently, but I don't think in its pure form. And a lot of people always asking about it, but let us just wait and see a little.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'm getting ready to send some pure.
Yes, I know. All right. See, somebody. So somebody just sent us a text, and this is Annie Walker. I don't know if you see it. Do you see it on the screen? So we just sent one string.
Angie Walker, good night.
Right. Good night. Okay, right. So that's how you will see it come up then. We'll put the questions over here, and then you will see the questions, and then we'll read the questions. Good night, Annie. So a lot of people say that the Kiko is very similar to our native goat, but when I see it, I saw the Kiko for the first time, and it's a little bigger than our natives. All right. I don't see Gigi. Gigi is there as yet. So you're going to be live on Facebook, right, Lynn?
Mm-hmm.
On YouTube too.
Yes, on YouTube.
Okay.
Stephen from Black Empress Charm. Good night.
Black Empress Charm. Good night. Good night. You know who never get it? Tusa.
Usen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's in the group. The
Okay, tell him I don't see.
Goat Resurrection.
No, not that. I'm Tosin. Tosin. Tell him I don't see you. All right.
You have 24.
All right. We have 24 persons now.
Okay.
So I will just say I'll just start here now, and we can go. So good night, everyone.
Black Empress and Randy Bailey.
Randy Bailey. All right. Good night, everyone. Trevor Bernard here, and I'm here with Dr. Ann, and her last name is
Peischel.
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 Dr. Peischel. Okay, but she said it's okay for us to call her Dr. Ann because that's easier. Good night, H. Moses. All right. So, Doc, you can just give us an introduction to yourself as it pertains, because you have such your accolades are so wide, but just tell us about your good night, sir. My friend from Nigeria is here. Good night. Good to see you. Can you just introduce yourself to us as it pertains to your Kiko Goat? I know you have a very wide calendar, but tell us about yourself and Kiko. Introduce yourself to us.
Okay. Yes. Hi, everybody. My name's Dr. Ann, and I've been raising Kikos for 35 years and raising goats for 40 years. I first got introduced to the Kikos in 1990 when I went down to the South Island of New Zealand, met Garrett Max, started the breed, and I was very impressed with them because I went in winter. They told me not to come here, but I wanted to see what the goats were actually doing because I do land enhancement. I work with decimated lands. I do fire abatement, weed abatement, duck flyways, river and stream bank restoration. So I do all kinds of projects with goats because that is exactly what the Kiko was bred for. It's
okay.
a goat.
So what you mean is when you say restoration, if you have lands that are bushed or is covered in a lot of brush and you can't access it, you use the Kiko Goat to clean the areas of the brushes and the shrubs.
Yes, and I also worked on lava fields because I started out with Kikos on the island.
Lava fields? Oh, you mean like because you were in Hawaii?
Yes, when I was in Hawaii, I worked on lava fields to bring the vegetation back to cover that lava.
Oh.
I worked on that for years.
Okay.
And so I brought in 4 bucks, and it
Mm-hmm.
was running 750 does.
Okay.
Over the 15 years, I worked that up to 1,500 does. And
Okay. So you imported 700 does, or
they were there
oh,
They
in Hawaii?
on a ranch, yes. And they were
Oh,
working with them. So I had an opportunity to take them and work with them for land enhancement.
mhm. I didn't understand something now. So these lands were just lava and no plants were there.
Oh, no, there were lava fields, there were forests, there was a lot of old grassy type vegetations. There were a lot of noxious weeds there. It was
Oh,
all types of vegetation.
okay, okay.
Every
So,
there.
okay.
I just
Somebody asked a question here while we're at it. It says, what is the Kiko goat?
The Kiko goat was bred as a mother for mother ability and utilization on low quality vegetation. It is a
Okay.
red goat. It's called a composite breed. It is from feral goats as the doe base. And then they bred the British Tog, the Anglo-Nubian, the Saanen, and the British Alpine.
So there's 3 breeds.
Oh, yeah, on top of the native breed.
Okay, so they use the native breed, then they put the Anglo-Nubian, the British Alpine,
British Tog,
British Tog,
and the Saanen.
and the Saanen. Okay, so Alpine is not there.
The British Alpine is there.
Oh, okay. So let me just repeat that. So it's the feral goat, the Nubian, the Anglo-Nubian,
And yes,
then the tugging bird, the British tugging bird, right?
Tog,
British tugging bird,
British Alpine,
British Alpine,
and the Saanen.
and the Saanen. So they added 4 to it. So it's 5 breeds combined.
Yes.
And then they did a lot of selective, they did a lot of selection.
Oh, yeah.
To,
Yeah, they started out with like 10,000 feral goats.
10,000 feral goats.
And they selected down to 1,000. And then they
Oh,
started their bucks.
okay. You had said something to me interesting. The last breed that was put on the Kiko goat was the Saanen, right?
Yes.
And you said it's just for color.
They put it on for color.
But it would have brought milk too, would it? I mean, wouldn't it be?
It is a milk goat also, but they wanted to set the standard in white.
Okay.
And
So the
now
Kiko,
color.
the Kiko then, in what you are saying, is that the Kiko is a lot of, is 4 different milk breed goats on that Kiko.
On the
And the Kiko is predominantly milk breeds.
yes, that's why it's a mother breed. It's a mother. They bred them for mother ability because feral goats aren't very large. They usually have singles. They're not the best mothers. They don't produce a lot of milk. The Kiko produces a very high quality milk. It doesn't have a large udder. It has 2 neatly placed teats, big enough for the little kids. But the milk is very high quality. It's very high in immunoglobulins.
Okay. So can the Kiko breed be used as a milking goat? Because if you said the quality is this good, does anybody do the rare Kikos for milk?
You can select some of them for milk, but the Kiko is usually it's been bred to dry off by weaning time, which is 3 to 3.5 months. If you want to keep the milk ability going, you're going to have to milk the goat.
Okay, because why I asked that question, you speak about how rich the milk is, and I know in the United States it's very popular, the Nigerian dwarf. You know that goat. And people talk about that's one of the richest milk or the best milk from a goat is the Nigerian dwarf. Would it be similar in terms of the quality of the milk?
I'm familiar with the Nigerian dwarf, but I don't know about its characteristic traits.
Okay, okay. No, I was just thinking about the milk quality because it's very high in butterfat and so forth, the Nigerian dwarf.
Well, the colostrum from the Kikos is it's a very dense colostrum, and it's very immunoglobulins.
Okay. So interesting. The Kiko is designed to, well, was bred to wean off at what, like 3 months? At 3 months, they stop producing milk? At what?
In New Zealand, they wean them at about 4 months.
4 months, okay.
And because their vegetative quality is really low. So they wean them at about 4 months. I wean mine at 3 to 3.5 months. But and then I start drying my does off before I wean. I don't know those.
All right. How do you dry off your Kiko goats? Because so everyone, I must let you know that Doc has our goats in the wild. Is that correct? Tell me how you do that aspect of it.
Yeah, they're all out in the brush. They're in different types of vegetation. Right now, I'm doing a project on a riverbank on River Cane. So yeah, they're out working. They have to work. They don't get to eat. So
okay.
They're a working breed, and that's what they were bred for in New Zealand, was to clean up a lot of the vegetation so that they could start raising red deer. So as they're cleaning up all these big major areas, they're starting to put red deer back. And the Kikos are really good at taking noxious vegetation, and their ability to know how to get on it and when to get off of it is really high. So I don't worry about, any toxic plants. There's a few that will kill them right away, but they know what to eat and what not to eat.
Okay.
They're pretty.
When we were talking though, we need to get back on how you got into the Kiko. You started there, but you can tell us a little more. I think you stopped at the point where you had 700 and went to 1,500 goats.
Yeah, because the does were not really good mothers, and so when I went to New Zealand and I saw the does up in the mountains with their little kids, and the little kids looked really good. It was raining, it was cold. Even though I lived in Hawaii, I lived on the backside of a mountain called Mauna Loa at 6,000 feet, and we got snow, even though it was Hawaii, and so they fit perfectly into my production management plan. And so that's why I started with the Kikos. I could only afford $4. They're very expensive. They weren't expensive, but shipping them was expensive. That and quarantine and all the blood testing.
Right.
So by the time they got to my farm, my ranch in Hawaii, I had a lot of money invested in them. Then we moved to California because we lost our meat population. Sugarcane left, so all the workers were native Filipinos or Hawaiian, Vietnamese. We had all different types of ethnic groups that worked in the sugarcane fields and the pineapples. And when those two products left the islands and went to the Dominican Republic and Florida, we lost our meat because I had like 2,800 kids a year that I sold for meat. And so I moved to California. That's where I started doing fire abatement in the forest.
Okay.
They worked.
All right. I'm going to go to a question here. This person said, "Good night, Mr. Bernard. Thanks again for raising the awareness about these beautiful creatures. We love the goats indeed." This Mr. Brown, he said, "Good night. can the Kiko survive in Jamaica? So I think the question is, you
Yeah.
spoke about the heat, the coldness. They are very good survivors in the cold. So we want to know about the heat because Jamaica is hot.
Yeah, I used them down by the. I used them on the ocean because that's where most of the lava flows on the island, and used them on the ocean, around the ocean. So it was very hot there on that black lava, and in California, used them on the ocean also for some knotweed abatement. Worked with gorse there, and here we have very high humidity, like 90% in the summertime, and they do fine. They're very adaptive. You need at a time when you get them. You need to give them about 4 to 6 months to get adapted to the area before you think about breeding them. Let them be adapted.
Right. Yeah, I find that also when with most of the goats that that I have brought here, usually 4 to 6 months for adaptation, really. Because in the beginning you will see like maybe colds or you see different things happening, you know, stress, different types of stress, but they adapt, and when they adapt, everything is okay. So you think the Kiko will do very well in Jamaica? The heat will not be an issue?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. We actually
you have to use low stress handling. You can't just move them. You can't tie them out. You know, you have to use very low stress handling. Put them in really good portable electric fence and let them move, let them find their own shade, let them find the areas that work for them.
So you just leave them in the rain, you leave them outside, no shelter, nothing.
Here in Tennessee, because we have snow, ice, sleet, we have to use some cover. So they're in the woods. I just put a tarp between some trees just to keep the wet off of them because they have no subcutaneous fat. So they get hypothermic.
But the heat, what about art? For example, in the Jamaican environment, we have rainfall, we have the rainy seasons, and then we have the dry seasons. What you think, how you think they would operate in our environment, just being out there without any shelter? Well, you have the tree shelters and so forth, but
yeah, as long as then they can, you know, if you have trees, you know, I save areas, specific areas, so that if I have bad weather, I can move the goats into that.
Okay, so you have a shaded area that you can move them into.
Well, shaded area is trees.
Trees, okay, trees, okay.
Like we have a lot of brush here, very tall vegetation, like they down on the river right now in the cane. You know, that's 8 feet tall. They can get in there and get shelter from the rain. It's unless you have ice and snow, you're not going to have to worry about major sheltering.
Shelter with them. So, my experiences with goats in Jamaica, right? Goats don't like water. I remember once I was walking, I was on a big, huge pasture, and we were going to cross a river. It wasn't a deep river, like just a light stream. And the sheep just walked into the river and walk across the river, and the goats refused. They would not walk into the water any at all. How the Kikos with water? Are they afraid of water just the same?
Not necessarily. It depends how fast the water's running. If they cannot see the bottom, if they can't focus on the bottom of the stream, they're not going across. If it's running, they'll walk across. If you want them to go across a fast stream, I use a board that's 14 by 2 inches, 10 feet long, flop the board across, and they all walk over.
Okay. Let me just go to a question here.
Rate of the water.
Because this is one of the things that that is very a blessing with the Kiko. We currently have 9 pregnant goats, and we are concerned about deworming them. What do you suggest? The mothers are due anytime soon. Please, your thoughts. Thank you very much. We are going to have 9 pregnant goats, and we are very concerned about deworming. All right. So myself personally, I'm not really concerned about deworming. I don't practice deworming as a regiment. I do not worm like that. We do the Fermantia score. We check the animals. If the animal is worm burden, then I will deworm the animals. Usually, where you house the goat and so forth, you know, in a good condition, and then usually you don't have worming burdens and so forth. Also, usually it's best to select animals. Like if you have a worm animal that you have to deworm often, then usually you do a lot of culling. But tell us, Anne, about the Kiko and deworming and what you do about that.
Well, I haven't dewormed since 1994 because everything I do is based on pasture management. I don't go into a pasture if the vegetation isn't taller than 8 inches, and I come out when it's 5 inches. So I'm very conscious. I'm always checking my vegetation, making sure that because the larvae will crawl up the plants 3 to 5 inches, 3 to 4 inches. So I'm moving out. I do Fermantia. I used to do fecal analysis, which you should probably start doing, so that you know exactly what internal parasites you have, whether you have Homuncus, Ostrogii, Couperii, Nematodoris. You need to know what you have before you think about deworming, because the dewormers aren't the same. They don't all get the same thing. So you need to know exactly what you have. And so you can learn how to do fecal analysis, very easy to learn. And then pasture management.
So in a nutshell, I'm going to summarize what you just said, Doc. So one of the important things that we always talk about is when you graze out there in the field, you should not graze the grass, like, as she said a while ago, below 4 inches tall, right? 3 to 4.
Oh, 5, because you're
right. Because the worms that are in the ground or in the grass, they come up and they only come up about maybe 4 inches, 3 to 4 inches. And if you allow the goats to eat the grass until you eat it right down to the ground, then that is how they pick up the internal parasites from the land and from the grasses and the plants that they eat on the ground. So it's good management. And another thing too is that in Jamaica, I don't know, Doc can comment on it, we don't allow the goats to go out early in the morning. Well, we are mainly have our goats in intensive farming, and we also keep them in pens. So usually when the sun is out and the grass is dried, that's when we let out the goats to go and feed, just to make sure that that worm burden is not there. But within your situation, your goats are always out there in the wild.
Yes.
Right. And so how you move them? I mean, they just don't eat the grass right down to the ground. They just move around.
No, I move them.
You move them.
Polywire electric fencing.
Oh, you use electric fencing.
Yep.
How big an area you keep the goats? Like an acre? How big?
Depends how many goats I have at the time. Right now, in one paddock, I have 50 goats. I look at the vegetation. I see it every day. I look at how they're working the vegetation down. And as soon as I see that it's getting to be about 5 inches, then I open up the gate
and move them.
And I just say, hey, you guys want new food? And they all kind of just stream right over and off we go.
To the next plot.
If I'm working in the woods, I have a border collie that I use because I can't walk through the whole woods. If I have an area of
you have 2 dogs, two dogs you say you use to move them around.
I just have a border collie.
Oh, 1 dog.
And I only use that dog if I'm in very high vegetation and if I'm in the woods.
Okay. What about the dog protecting them from what? You don't have wild animals like foxes or anything like that?
Yeah, I raise Kangals, Akbash, and Anatolians.
Okay. As security dogs from wild animals?
14. I got 14 dogs right now.
Oh, 14 dogs.
Wow.
Okay.
Serious. It's very serious.
Okay. And the dogs look after the goats. They're trained to take care of the goats.
Well, I don't train them. I facilitate them as little pups.
Mm-hmm.
And one or two pups will run with older dogs, and the older dogs facilitate them.
Okay.
Instinctive, or they don't work. They don't work too well for me.
Right. So in a nutshell, myself, I don't practice deworming. I do deworming only if it is totally necessary. But most of the time, there's no deworming happening around me. Because as you know, the animals will build up a resistance to the wormers and the drugs and all of these things, that, you know, antibiotics and all of these kind of drugs. It's best to stay away from them. And when the goats are eating some of these noxious plants or some of these plants with the tannin in there, it actually becomes like a natural wormer to them. So, you know, and they build up a resistance to worm after a time.
Yeah.
All right. So
there are a lot of native plants that are very high in tannins.
Right.
Dewormer. And there are some nuts that are very high in tannin, the shells. And you can throw the nuts in your water trough, and they can.
Shells? What kind of shells? What do you mean shells?
The shells on the nuts.
Oh, the shells. Okay, like the peanut shell or, you know, almond shell or something like that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what kind of nuts you have, but.
Mm-hmm. Those are good dewormers. You know, I must ask you something. Coconut shells. I see the goats eat out the coconut shells sometimes, dry coconut. Have you ever seen that?
I've seen them peel the brown, long hair off them, but I've never seen them.
Okay.
We've had
all right
on the islands, and they used to beat their feet on the coconuts and the avocados, and they'd eat the nuts of the avocado, and then they'd eat the center off of the coconuts.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Miss Brown here said, thank you for the information. It's interesting to know that they need to adapt for at least 4 months before breeding them. And generally speaking, when you carry a new goat to your farm, they need to be adapt and get used to their environment before you breed them. It is always best to do that. Good night, Mr. Bernard, Sir B. Plant Nursery. Kiko are the best, hands down. Anxiously waiting to get my hands on a buck. Deep Creek Kiko
program.
This is Frederick from Tanzania. Is that Tanzan? Tamazan. Okay. Frederick. Yeah, so a lot of people is talking about the buzz. There's a buzz on the Kiko now. And as Doc said before, she don't practice any worming. She does not worm the animals any at all. What about drugs, Doc? Do you do vitamins, any drug, anything at all? Any of those kind of things? Mineral? Do you do free choice minerals? Do you do any of those things?
Yeah, I do free choice chelated minerals.
Chelated minerals. What is a chelated minerals?
It means that the zinc, the selenium, and the copper are bound to a protein, usually methionine, and it gets absorbed in the small intestine easier. Chelated minerals are 80% absorbable, whereas just plain old minerals are only about 23%.
Okay.
Sea kelp, North Atlantic sea kelp, because that's excellent for the immune system. It gives you very high immunoglobulins in your colostrum. It helps prevent E. coli. It helps with reproduction. So it's a very high quality supplement to, feed.
Okay. I don't know it at all. At first I'm hearing it, but we can talk after and we do the research, and I will post it in the group so that people can know more about that mineral that you use. What about drugs or anything else? Is there anything else that you do?
I do, because when I sell my kids, I don't know where they're going. So I do vaccinate my does for Clostridial pharyngeal, C and D with tetanus. And then that goes 3 weeks before it gets into the colostrum, and the little kids will pick it up because the little kids don't have a functioning immune system until they're about 8 weeks old.
Right.
Because we have deer here, deer carry an abortion disease called leptospirosis. So
Right.
my dose for leptospirosis.
So leptospirosis is also with rats. We see it with the rats carry leptospirosis in Jamaica. So you vaccine them for the leptospirosis, all your animals, but you do not vaccine for anything else on your herd that you are running. But if you are selling the kids, then you vaccine them. Then you vaccine them for tetanus, especially. Tetanus is one of the problems we have here. Yes.
Yeah, and the Clostridial pharyngeal, C and D.
Okay. So why don't you vaccine? Why don't you practice vaccine on your herd? Otherwise,
I have a closed biosecure herd. There has never been another goat on my farm come into my farm since 1994. I closed my herd. Nothing comes in here.
what about the deers? I mean, you have deers, you have other wild animals.
Dogs.
And the dogs stop that.
Yes.
Oh, so you have never had any what's the that you're vaccine against? What your vaccine when you export the goats, you vaccine them tetanus. You have never had any episode of tetanus before?
No. And I
Okay.
just bud my goats. I don't like goats with horns. So all of my females are just budded.
Oh, okay. You de-on all your goats.
No, I don't dehorn them. I just bud them.
What's the difference?
Disbudding you do at 5 to 7 days of age.
Right.
Dehorning is after they have horns, you bone saw them off.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that clarity. I just that I call everything dehorning, but yes. Okay, that's all right. All right, Kiko, the best. Oh, we did the next question. What do you use to treat mastitis? Well, you have mastitis problems with the Kiko?
No,
okay, so there are no mastitis problems with the Kiko goats.
Well, it depends on your management. If you only have a doe that has one kid, it's only drinking from one side.
Right.
You can get mastitis on that side. So you have to get out. So everything is management.
Right. Agree.
Can't be a slacker. You've got to keep on it.
Right. Yeah, you have to manage. It's definitely so, because sometimes even when the kids twin, there are occasions when the two kids will want to just stay on one of the nipples. So you have to just watch the goats at all times and make sure.
What I call teat tape. You just the teat that they keep wanting to nurse on, you just tape it up to the top of their body.
But how you do that with 500 and 700 goats, Doc? Or how do you manage with so many goats?
I manage away from the problem.
All right. Yes. You make sure you don't have the problem.
I don't have foot rot. I don't have foot scald. I don't have foot abscesses. I don't have mastitis. You adamantly, I've been doing it for 40 years. So
even the wet time, when it gets very wet, you don't have no foot rot, none of those issues?
No, because they're out in the field. Even though it's there, they will find a dry place. They'll find rocks to stand on. They find limestone ledges.
Okay.
You've got to make sure that they don't have overgrown feet. If you're not taking care of their feet, then you have a problem. But
so you actually cut their hoofs also. You cut.
I had a mob this year, and I only did cut 3.
Okay.
And
sometimes you have to do hoof management
next year.
Okay.
You manage for great feet, big feet, wide open toes.
Okay. So do you feed any grains or any supplement like that? Grains like bag feeding, corn, anything?
It depends on the weather. If it's like we're having a really bad winter right now. It's been raining, I don't know, for the last 2 weeks. It's been cold down to 13, 14 degrees. So I use some alfalfa hay. I also use orchard grass hay. You got to be real careful with alfalfa in the bucks or you'll give them erythrolytis. So you're going to look if you
The bugs?
The bucks, yeah.
Oh, the bucks. Oh, it will give them stoppage of urine with the alfalfa?
Yes, alfalfa is a problem for bucks.
For bucks, okay.
So
people always asking me about alfalfa. I didn't know that alfalfa is a problem with
bucks.
With the bucks, right. So this person was asking, what do you use for mastitis treatment? Well, they have a mastitis treatment 1 a day and other products that you can use to treat mastitis.
Yeah,
the farm store.
One of them is called Day 1 or Day
1 and Day 2, and they have another one that you just use it without just it doesn't say Day 1 or Day 2. So there are different products, and you just put it in the teeth and put this gel, this creamy looking thing inside there, massage it in, and usually
milk out the milk inside.
Yeah, we usually milk out the bad milk first, and then you put the mastitis treatment in there.
And if you're going to milk them out, you should use hot compresses so that it starts loosening up all that.
Or you should use warm water. Hot cloth.
Compresses that you can put in the microwave.
Oh, okay. I know what you're talking. Yes.
You can hold them in your hand. Then you can use them on the goat. If it's too hot for your hand, you can't use them.
Right. Okay.
So you them out.
How about moringa leaves? Can you use moringa leaves to fight? Yeah, most of these plants, moringa, wild tamarind, all of these plants are natural wormers. And it's good.
But if you don't correct management, they won't work.
Right. Next. How do they take care of?
How do you take
care of cholesteras in your goat? Coccidiosis. Coccidiosis in the goats. Do you have these problems?
No. Coccidiosis comes from crowded situations, dirty.
Right.
It's also a management problem.
Right.
And if you have cocci, then you need to, there are coccidiostats that you can use, like Corid. There's another one, Decox. But you also need to give electrolytes at the same time. You need to give iron at the same time. You need to give them B vitamins, and you need to use an amino acid complex.
Right. So usually in Jamaica we have this stress, like they have these pouches with some stress minerals, like, and you just mix it in their water. That's what a lot of farmers here use. And they also have antibiotic or different products that they use to treat this. But you don't have this problem on your farm.
No, and why would you mix it in the water? You only give it to the animals that need it, and you that need it aren't the ones that are drinking the water.
Right.
They're back and they're not drinking. So what? And the other thing is, you don't want to have your older goats drinking a coccidiostat, because when they're about 8 months old, 9 months old, they build up a natural immunity to coccidia. So if you're giving them a coccidiostat in the water, you're decreasing their immunity. So you're doing it on purpose.
Very important point, Doc.
So it's the kids. You got to worry about the kids.
Right.
So just stay clean.
Right. So as you say, it's a management problems. When you have poor management, Usually that's when they consider bacteria, attacks you and so forth. All right, so today, as you know, we are here concentrating on the Kiko goats today, and we are here with DR.AN, and we have 72 people online now, Doc, and everybody is listening to you. We are talking about the Kiko goats. And I would like to say that I saw the Kiko goat at our Bodles research station. So we actually imported some Kiko goats. The government imported the Kiko goats at the Bodles research station, and we have some there. And I was told that when they import, I think they imported over 200 animals in Jamaica, different breeds, the tugging bird, the Sani, Kiko, Boers, I think Alpine. Quite a number of breeds were imported at our research station, and they are going to breed them, and then farmers probably will have access to these. They're going to collect semen, and farmers will have access to these genetics at some point. But one of the things that I wanted to mention is that when you talk to the people at the research station, they said that the Kiko was one of the goats who maintained themselves the best under high stress. They were able to maintain themselves, and they were always looking good. It's almost difficult to make them look in a bad condition. And I was very surprised, but the goats that struggled the most was the tugging bird. I found that very surprising, The tugging bird was not as adaptive, and the Kikos just adapted very quickly to the Jamaican environment, and they were just up and running. And when I would look at the station, the Kiko was just looking very, very nice, very, very. And the Sani surprisingly looked very good also. All right. Also, how do you manage absorption in your herd? Abortion. Sorry. How do you manage abortion in your herd? Do you have abortion issues? And
No.
No?
It seems like perfect though.
No abortion issues?
No, because abortions are caused by, number one, poor management. You're stressing animals. They have a minimized immune system. They're on poor nutrition, so they can't maintain a fetus. You have to remember that goats will keep themselves alive. So if that means getting rid of a fetus, they're going to do it.
Right.
Bullies in the herd. You have other goats that chase around the does. They beat up on the doe's sides. They can cause abortions.
Right.
And then you have disease. Do you have, leptospirosis? Do you have chlamydia? So there's different abortion diseases. So one of the ways to prevent that is do not borrow bucks.
Correct.
One buck, keep your buck clean, test him, and make sure he doesn't have any, diseases like Akabani or any of the other type of abortion diseases. But it all comes back around again to management.
That's correct. Management is key because, Doc,
also,
I have seen.
Treat them too young, they'll abort because they're maintain pregnancy.
Right. When do you breed? At what age do you breed your goats?
16 to 18 months of age.
Okay. And I agree with that, Doc. When you breed the goats too early, yes, you can have abortion issues. And I think it's better to wait a few months, because there's a practice here in Jamaica that they breed the goats at 7 months. Some people 8 months, 9 months. People have different ideas. I usually like to breed my goats at about 14 months. That's what I have been practicing. But when you breed them early, sometimes you have birth problems, like it's difficult for them to kid, and you have abortion. And another thing that happens too, sometimes those young mothers will walk away and leave the kid after the kid born because they're not mature enough to handle the kidding and the whole process. And they will walk away and leave the kid.
Yeah, they don't have the mental capacity.
The mental capacity, that's correct. Yes, Doc, that's true.
Their pelvic is not big enough to kid.
Right.
You've got to have that bone growth. The other thing that happens is during the birthing process, when they're using oxytocin to open up the cervix, it takes a lot of calcium to work with the oxytocin. And if they're young and you're trying to pull it out of the bone, it's not there. And so now you have to help pull the kids.
Mm-hmm.
So you just run into more problems.
Right.
I'm not a problem person.
And
Against any kind of problem I think I could possibly have.
right. And I must say this, Doc, that's one of the things that I find with the boar goat. The boar goat has a lot of problems. I find, you have to help them a lot. You have to do a lot of different things with the boar goats that I've seen, we have them. They require a lot more management than, other types of goat. And when you listen to you talking about almost zero management of most of these processes, with a boar, it's just like sheep. Generally speaking, I find sheep that way too. You don't have a lot of management with sheep also.
Yeah, the Katahdins are really good ones.
Yes, the Katahdin sheep. Yes, that's correct. And we have another sheep here, the black belly sheep that comes from Barbados. Yes, very low management. And there was an interesting conversation we had the other day, Doc, when you were telling me about sheep and goats. You can just explain that. We were saying sheep, you have to look at your pasture and see what you have before you decide to buy sheep or goats. If you can have that conversation.
Yeah, you may not have a farm that is conducive to goats. You might need sheep, but then again, you might not need sheep. You might need goats. So everything you need to look at is going to be based on your vegetation.
That's correct. So the reason why she's saying that is that if you have a farm that has grass on it, then you really need to be rearing sheep. If you have a farm that has a lot of forages, tree forage, shrubs, different things like that goats like, then you have a farm good for goat rearing. So sheep eat different things, a little different from, you see, a sheep can survive on just grass alone and do very well, but goats need those shrubs, right, Doc?
Yeah, goats only in their diet should only have about 10% grass.
10% grass. Wow.
But if you have guinea grass or pangola or one of the really tall growing grasses and they're starting to die off, the seed heads are very high in energy. So you can go in there at that time and use those seed heads as an energy source.
Right. So it's almost like, like how we would use, for example, like, the seed heads is like the barley seeds or, the different seeds that are produced at the top of the grass, which people, that is high in carbohydrates and protein and so forth. Yes, I agree.
Good night, Sophia. Good night. Sally's Jobo.
Dr. Ann, are there any key points or tips about management you would like to share with us? As I notice, everything revolves around management.
Well, I think you have to be very tuned in to your livestock, to have the mental capacity to be able to think like them and be able to keep them out of trouble. You also have to understand what problems you could have, your disease problems, taking care of your little kids. You're just going to put in a lot of experience and be careful that you don't get wrapped up in bad information off the internet. Really know the producer that you're talking to. Make sure that they're producing goats in the same situation that you are.
Right.
They're in Idaho and it's winter there. It doesn't do you any good to try and talk with them. So try and utilize people that are under your same situation.
Right. Because even like changing the feed, I always tell farmers, if you're going to change your feed type or change any of the feeding methods or so forth, you have to do it, you can't just switch radically. Yes.
That's because because of the microflora in the gut, they have to change. They have to recolonize. And the other important thing people don't realize is water. And the water has to be clean and fresh every day, not just one
Right.
or every other day. Every day they have to have clean, fresh water because utilize low quality forage, you have microflora colonized in there. And there's a couple hundred, 600 different types of microflora in a gut. And you're trying to colonize the microflora that are going to chew on all this tough vegetation. So,
right. Definitely. Yes, Miss Brown said management is key. What would make a goat have clear runny nose with a cough?
Are they in dust area? Are they eating down low? Are you trying to go through taller vegetation and it's getting up their nose? Sometimes it gets in their eyes. You know, goats have a third eyelid, and you can clean out that eyelid by taking a Q-tip with saline, putting it at the corner of their eye, and they'll run that across for you. And then you'll know if they're really getting into different types of vegetation that's going up their nose. If in a dusty area. Also, there's, problems with lungworms.
Right.
Are you sure you don't have a lungworm problem?
Doc, when you just spoke about, and you said lungworm, when you spoke about dirty water, sometimes, like in swampy areas, you'll go and you see the goats drinking the water, and you'll have the green stuff in that water, and they will be drinking the water. I hear that you can get, and it will cause lung problems and so forth. You can comment on that?
The blue algae. It's also toxic. It'll kill them. You never let goats drink out of streams, mud puddles, nothing. They always drink out of an enclosed container with fresh water. And you fence. I have a beautiful pond. It's fenced out.
So you do not allow your goats to drink out of your fish pond or any kind of pond whatsoever because
of disease.
And the diseases.
And also, if you're on your water troughs, you have to keep them clean because they'll get blue-green algae on them, and the blue-green algae will kill them.
So blue-green algae and those green stuff in your troughs, in your water pans, are dangerous for goats.
Real dangerous.
Really very dangerous for goats. Guys, you hear that?
They're drinking out of a pond. You don't know what other animals have been in there. Do you have epizootic hemorrhagic disease that's carried by other animals? That's a blood disease. There's all different kinds of diseases that can come in that water.
Right.
So I'm kind of
some things that we take for granted, Doc. Those are some things that we probably, because I always see the cattle. I know you're also big on cattle. Is that the same for cattle? Because I see the troughs, same thing. You should always, yeah. Very, very important because I am and it can and some of those, when they drink the water from those streams or those in the swamp and those dirty green water, I've seen once we slaughtered a buck and the organ was damaged. Their things, the liver, the liver was damaged, and the fluke worm, they were saying that it was a fluke worm. You're right.
You have any place you have a snail?
Snail, yes. That's what carries the liver. Fluke worm, snails. Okay, good, very interesting.
Snails in the water.
Snails, yes.
Probably, yeah.
And that's why you stay away from short pasture.
Right. Oh, snails. Yeah, somebody, you should stay away from pastures because of snails. But somebody asked me about grasshopper. The grasshoppers, that if goats eat it, it will affect them. I didn't know how to answer that question.
I don't have very many grasshoppers.
Okay.
I can't help you out on the grasshoppers.
Okay. All right, but some of those insects and so forth can be toxic, though.
Yeah, ferns kill your plants too.
Right.
I don't know, the snail.
Does fern affect goats' health?
Ferns when they're in the fiddlehead, they're all curled up and tight. That's when they're toxic. As soon as they open up, then they're okay.
Oh, so when the ferns are closed up, they are toxic.
When they're young.
And when they're young, that's
Yeah.
when they're usually young. But when it's mature, it's usually okay.
Okay.
And the goats usually can select, they usually will select it when it's right.
A lot of them.
Okay.
Ferns here.
Okay.
And they'll pick through them. But see, then in the winter, when the ferns turn brown, they'll come back and eat the leaves off.
Okay. All right. Miss Brown, did Doc just say the seeds of the grass is good for the goats? Yes. Because, for example, barley seed and all the different seeds, you know, it's really the seeds that they reap, like sorghum and these things, they reap the seed off the top of the grass and we eat them. So, Doc, you can comment on that.
Well, you got to be real careful with sorghum because that's extremely high in tannin. It can be toxic. But, you know, if they're eating amaranth, they're eating, I don't know what kind of, do you have Bahia grass there? Bahia,
yes.
Pangola. Once those grasses die down and all you have are the seed heads left on the grass, yeah, they can eat them and they're high in energy.
Right.
Because those seeds have gathered the energy because they're waiting to fall off, go into the ground, and that's the energy they're going to use.
Right.
So
that is correct. Barley seeds, all these seeds are, most of these seeds are from grasses like barley and, you know, so forth.
You don't want to careful.
You don't want what?
Don't use wheat.
Okay.
High in gluten.
Okay. All right, next question. Good night. What causes soft and runny stool? Well, you can comment, Doc.
Many things.
Many things. And you don't have those problems.
Sometimes because the goats will get into some new vegetation that they haven't eaten before and they'll get loose stools. They'll be coming from a pasture that's been, you know, had dry vegetation in it. And now they get into some vegetation that's a little damp. And it depends what age are they? Are they kids? Little, Are they yearlings? Are they does?
Right.
You know,
sometimes the grasses, when the grasses are green, you know, like the nitrogen comes up to the tip of the grass and it will cause soft stool. But also, it can be, you know, bacteria or some kind of infection in the gut.
Yes. It can be an internal parasite.
Internal parasites, yes. You know, worming issues.
Fecal analysis.
Right. Fecal analysis will usually tell you what is happening. And also, it's very important for you to watch the feces from the animals because the feces can tell you a lot. It tells you everything about, you know, the condition of the goats and what's happening with them. It's very important to watch that feces. All right.
Good night, Barrett. Mr. Barrett.
How do you know if your goat has lungworm?
They cough and they cough and they cough, and at some point you'll find them floating on the water trough.
Or you see the worm. You see the worm floating on the water.
The larvae, yeah.
Oh, I've never seen that before. What is the treatment? How do you treat it?
Lungworms?
Lungworms.
They're called valbazen.
We didn't hear you.
Valbazen.
Valbazen, okay. So it's treatable.
It's treatable, but you got to catch it before they destroy the bronchial, the young bronchi in those lungs.
So how do you catch it before it gets bad? How do you really know?
Fecal analysis.
Fecal analysis. So there is.
So
you can't know. You're really not going to know. Otherwise, it's a fecal analysis. You can't see the coughing or guessing or.
A lot of coughing, but unless they spit them up, you're not going to see them floating. I mean, you should be able to see them in the water, but then it's really bad. You know, and it's just like tapeworms from dogs, and it's usually the little kids that pick them up.
So you got to make sure if you've got dogs running with your goats, that your dogs are treated for internal parasites.
Okay.
Just don't give the little kids tapeworms. Well,
Right.
those too.
Mm-hmm. All right. So these questions, is there anything you recommend giving a kid like a Nutrient, etc.? Well, Doc says she don't use those products, but is there anything you recommend? You don't recommend any of that?
You're only going to use that if they're, 2-3 days old and having a problem.
Right.
Because
You only use drugs or use anything like that when you have problems. Yes.
But see, you got to be careful that they're not sugar-based. Goats don't digest sugar. They do carbohydrates. So if you're using a sugar-based product, then you can give them the poops. Also, if you're using any type of molasses or say they get into bananas and they're sucking the banana sap out of the plant, they'll get the poops. So anything that's high in sugar, it's going to give them poops.
What is poops? What do you call poops?
Loose stools.
Oh, loose stool. Okay. Okay.
Sorry.
All right. So in Jamaica, we use a lot of molasses. They use molasses a lot, but you don't recommend it.
It's the worst thing you can do to a goat.
Why do you feel like? Because they put molasses in also the feed, in the bag feeding.
It's sugar-based. Goats don't use sugar. They use carbohydrates. Why are they using molasses? Is it a product they have to get rid of?
Well,
I mean, I would never consider using it.
Well, I know that the grains or bag feeding, they use molasses, but I think they use, well, I hear you, Doc. All right, next question.
Why are they using it? And are you importing it from the US?
Yeah, I think they import some and we produce some, but I'm not a nutritionist like that. I will ask the question though. But I hear what you say about the molasses. I'm not going to comment on it because I don't think I'm qualified. But I know that they use molasses. I think part of it is because it's a binder for the grains, to make it into pellets, maybe. And I hear what you're saying.
The heat should make the pellets bind. They shouldn't have to, if you're feeding a pelleted feed, they shouldn't have to add molasses to it if they're binding it right.
Okay. All right. I know that one of the things that we do when we make silage, we use molasses when we preserving silage, we use molasses in it in the process. But that molasses really is the bacteria eating the sugars in the preservation processes. So it's a little different for silage production. If you want to comment. When you're making silage, I know you don't do silage because you are mainly pasture.
Oh no,
Tensile.
Here who do silage.
Right.
Don't use molasses. You either use propionic acid or lactic acid.
Yeah, that's what
They don't.
So you use, because I have used citric acid.
You can use citric acid. It's the same down the line as lactic acid.
So you use lactic acid, or which other one?
Propionic acid.
Propionic acid. So that's what you use when you are making silage, when you're ensiling. Okay, could you tell us why you use that and not molasses? Because we tend to be using molasses, but tell me the science behind it.
Because both of those, propionic acid is the acid that is most utilized by the rumen bacteria that digest the hemicellulose and the cellulose the fastest. So it's a very, very important acid. Even though there's more acetic and butyric in the gut, propionic is the one that you want to increase for better digestion. And acid is to help with the fermentation.
Okay, so because with the for preservation though, I think this is why we use molasses to preserve that silage that it don't mold and so forth. But you are saying the acid is better. The citric acid is better to use to ensile.
It won't mold either. But remember, mold has to do with air. So
right.
You cover it really well. And you got to be very careful with silage and goats because you can give them listeriosis, and you don't want to do that.
What is listeriosis?
Listeriosis is a brain disease they get from eating molasses or silage that's been out in the air, and it's starting to mold, and it has other bacteria.
Okay. Right. Okay. Molded silage. Yes. Okay.
Bacteria. They walk around in circles.
All right. Okay. Yeah. You know that walking around in circle that you just described. There is a plant in Jamaica. We call it broomweed. And when they eat, it's a very. But the funny thing is, our native goats will eat it and they are fine. But when, like, you know, some other breeds of goat eat it, it affects their nerves, and they walk around in circles. Have you seen that?
Yes.
Okay, so that is you have seen that with goats. How the Kiko manages that? Do you have any problems like that with the Kiko?
Well, it depends on if it's listeriosis or is it polio. So what you do is you treat for both of them at the same. If you treat for, when you treat for polio, you give them thiamine hydrochloride at high levels. So with high levels of thiamine hydrochloride, they're going to come out of it in 2 days. They have listeriosis. But if you're treating them at the same time for listeria, it's high levels of antibiotics. Procaine penicillin G is probably the one you'd use. So if they come out of it in 2 days, you can quit the antibiotics. If they don't come out of it, you have to keep it going until they kind of get turned around and can start on their own. But when you're doing the antibiotics, you also need to use probiotics as a bolus down into the gut, because the antibiotics kill the bacteria in the gut.
Right. I agree. So what you just said a while ago, I don't know, I didn't know that. So I have to get some more information on that, because what I was told is that when they get that, you have to give them a lot of vitamin B and vitamin. I think it was vitamin B, heavy vitamin B, that will bring them out of it. But you are saying something different here now, which is very interesting.
Thiamine hydrochloride is a very highly concentrated vitamin B.
Oh.
You can use fortified vitamin B complex, but you have to get of it for a longer period of time. Or you can use thiamine hydrochloride, and you can give less of it for a shorter period of time.
Okay.
The more concentrated drug.
Doc, some of these things you're saying to me, right? Well, you know, I'm not a vet or I have that. Have you documented any of these things in terms of your studies that you can share with us?
I probably haven't documented.
You have all of that in your brain, and you're not. Have you written a book? Have you?
I'm working, and my book is sitting right down here on the floor. It's 3/4 done. I'm trying to get it done.
Yes, I would like to see the book. Some of these things we're talking about, we want to see it in your book, and so I hope I can get a copy of it in another couple of days.
Yeah,
because it's interesting to hear, you know.
Yeah, I'm not a veterinarian either, but I do work with a veterinarian. I have a very good one, and he'll on occasion call me, and I tell him, "Hey, I'm a killer cure person. I will try."
What is a killer cure person? What that mean? You have to give me some of these languages.
Huh? A lot of reading on what they think their problem is, and trying to decide how to use different drugs to work with that problem. And then sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
You know, even the veterinarians, some of the problems we come up with are really hard to diagnose.
Right. Yes. Even human beings, that is so too.
Yeah.
The green
grasshopper will surely kill if they ingested.
Yeah, they're saying the green grasshopper will kill the animal if they ingest it. I learned that and lost a big goat from green grasshopper. I've heard this before many times, but I hear farmers say that all the time. Huh?
Yeah, I know the Japanese eat them. but I guess you cook them first.
The Japanese eat them.
Yeah,
Okay.
being from the islands, I'm from Hawaii, so I do have a lot of Japanese friends.
Friends there. Okay. So that's why you know.
They cook them.
Where can we find Dr. Kiko that she sells? All right. Well, Doc, so just to give you a thing there, so Doc is actually there are I think about 2 farmers, maybe 3 farmers that are going to be buying, or probably have bought already, Kiko goats from Doc, and there is conversation of importing Kikos to Jamaica now from Doc, and I know she has that ongoing right now. It's very far gone in all of those decisions, just to tell you. So you have to book with her.
They haven't cleared quarantine yet. I mean, in the Jamaican quarantine hasn't been cleaned yet. So some of the, not my goats, there are goats in quarantine in Arkansas right now that are coming to Jamaica, but they're not mine. I'm keeping my farm until all the alleyways are cleared in Arkansas and Jamaica before I send mine, because mine are biosecure. So if that person wants any, they need to email me. Like, because they still are here.
Right.
Also waiting for the paperwork to come from Jamaica before I ever send any out.
Right.
So I have an agreement with the people that have bought goats already that I would keep them on my farm until everything's ready to go. And
right.
They need
all right. So and a relationship is developing. And for everyone who wants to know or wants any information with Doc, as you know, Mr. Miller, Alfonso Miller, is one of the approved quarantine in Jamaica to handle goats. So he is, and you know, everybody know that Mr. Miller, I recommend him in terms of any kind of importation of goats to Jamaica. You can contact Mr. Miller and he will hook you up with DR.AN and all of that. So Mr. Miller is that contact person, and DR.AN is working along with Mr. Miller, and I'm in the mix of everything all the time, Doc. But you know, Mr. Miller is the importation guru.
Yeah. Or they can just text me if I need to know how many they would like.
Right.
I know them the price.
Right.
I don't internationally for any more than I sell them here.
Right.
They're all registered. I microchip them all. They're all tattooed, and you get everything so that you know when they come out of quarantine, they're your goat.
Yes, that's right. Because you understand quarantine, you started it back in the 90s, and you know how rigid quarantine can be, and it's very difficult, a very difficult process and expensive.
It is very.
Is there a preventative measure to lungworm? Well, clean water, like anything to out in the goats in the water? No, am I correct?
Yeah, you'd have to ask a parasitologist on that one. I mean, I can check it out for you. I'll put it in my notes here to check that out.
All right. Is there a preventive measure? Are there Kikos in Jamaica? And do you have to import them? So there are Kikos have just started to come to Jamaica. So it has just started. As I said before, Bodles have Kiko. In other words, the government. There was also another farmer who brought, I don't think they were full bred or so forth, but there are a small amount of the genetics here in Jamaica.
I mean, I also do semen if anybody's interested.
Right. So semen, everything is available from Doc. All right. What would you use as an alternative to molasses? Well, she had said the acids early on that she used. For example, in Jamaica, we use citric acid or And she also suggested lactic acid
And propionic acid.
and propionic acid next.
Yeah. I mean, are they just trying to feed their goats? You can use pineapple juice. You know, there's all kinds of, we fed pineapple skins in,
Right.
but you got to be real careful with, if you're feeding anything with a real low pH, it'll rot their teeth.
Right. Yes.
So you have to be careful what you're going to feed it to. You don't want those.
All right. Is WEAT wheat? Is wheat a good food to give goats?
Wheat?
Yeah.
No, it's too high in gluten.
All right. So when we are here talking to Doc, she is predominantly pasture. She uses her goats to control weed and brush in different areas all across her area and so forth. She's an expert on this type of thing. And her goats are just out there in the wild, and she managed them out there, no shelter, no housing facility or anything like that. All right. What about if I am in Texas, USA?
Well, the problem with wheat is when the goats grind it up with their teeth, they're releasing all the gluten. Now you have the water congealing with the gluten, and what you're ending up with is a big hunk of dough. And it's very hard to break that down once it's in the gut. If you can find a wheat that is gluten-free, I mean, there are gluten-free wheats because people with gluten problems have to eat it. You might be better off trying rye.
Okay. I don't know if you have these problems. What is the best way to treat bloats in goat? Do you have any problems with bloating?
No, but there is there's a product. It's available through Valley Vet Supply. It is for goats. For bloat, I'm trying to think what it is. You can also use, don't laugh, you can mix mineral oil with Coke. You know, the
mineral oil with Coca-Cola?
Coca-Cola, and that'll help with bloat.
Wow, that's a new one. Mix mineral oil with Coca-Cola.
The mineral oil down, the Coca-Cola makes them belch.
Quantity.
What kind of quantity? Like how you mix it?
Okay, now you're stressing my brain here. I think it's like a half a cup of mineral oil in an 8-ounce bottle of Coke.
Okay. And just drench them with it.
There is a thing, it's called Bloat Guard. And you can get it from a company called Valley Vet Supply. It's just a small bottle, but it's for 500-pound animals. So, you'll have to measure it out, but it's really great. I've recommended that before to a couple of the goat folks that I work with that have bloat problems.
Okay. What about silver? I don't know what is this. Orange juice.
Orange juice. Seville.
I don't know what is Seville orange juice. Can they get it? I don't know what that means. Go next question. I don't know.
I know they eat orange peels, but
right. Yes, because our orange, we used to have orange pulp. Like, when they juice the orange, we used to feed the waste from the orange to the animals. Even when it's dry or it's put down for a long time, and it causes the animals also to, we call it orange pulp. They usually produce a lot of milk when we give them that orange pulp.
Yeah, just be careful how much you feed.
Okay. We don't have access to it anymore like that, but I know it used to be very good to feed the animals with it.
Yeah,
so
what you have to do is not lower the pH of the gut. The pH of the rumen has to be about 6.8. When you start feeding citrus, you're dropping it down to 4. And so you don't have the digestive capabilities if you have a higher pH.
Okay, so let's just make sure we get the pH part of it right. Doc, high pH over 7 is acidic. No, it's alkaline. Alkaline, right?
Going to be
right.
About
and when you're on the lower end, it is acidic. So you don't want an alkaline ruminant. You want a an acidic thing. And that is one of the reasons why you mentioned about using the acids to ferment for the silage process and all of that. It's also keeping that ruminant acidic. And if you get too low, below 4, it's also not good if you make it too acidic. Right. All right.
Back if you get down to like a pH of 3.
Why did you choose Kiko Goat and not choose other breeds of goat? Why Kiko? Why did you make that decision, and why you ended up with Kiko? You had all these other goats in America that I'm sure were very nice, good goats. All those other feral goats in America, you know, Spanish goats, you know, Alpine, Nubians. Why Kiko?
Well, the mob that I started out with was a Spanish group, and there were also there were different dairy breeds in there. There were also Kashmir, there were Angora, and someone talked me into thinking about Boer goat to increase my genetic potential. So when I went to New Zealand to look at Boer goats, I spent about a month there. And I went to Kerry, and I met with Ron and Sue Cornelius, who managed the farm for Landcorp. And I stayed with them. And every night we sat around the table and just talked. And one day we're sitting out in the field, and Ron said to me, after all you've told me about the goats you have, you don't need a Boer goat.
Mm-hmm.
Get yourself in more trouble than you bargained for.
Right.
He got me a plane ticket and sent me to Garrett Batten. And I spent quite a bit of time with Garrett. And we went and we looked at Angoras. We went and we looked at Kashmirs. We looked at feral goat. We looked at everything. Went to a couple of dairies. And he finally, he said, okay, now you're going to go up on that mountain. You're going to take a hike. It's raining. It's cold. I got to walk up this hill. And when I got halfway up, there were all these little kids out there just beating on this toxic vegetation, eating the leaves off. Their mums were in there. Mums took a break, fed the kids. Everybody else went back to browsing. And I turned around and I walked down the hill and I said, I'll take them.
Right. So that's where
I wanted. I went on the breed that was going to work for me.
Right. One of the places that we look a lot in, we always talk about in Jamaica because of our climate conditions is the goats, some of the different goats in Africa and, in India. Have you ever been to Africa or see any of the African breeds of goats or the Indian breeds of goats? You can talk about that because I think you did some work there too.
Yeah, I worked in South Africa. The goat I liked there was the Barbary goat.
The Barber?
Barbari goat.
Barbary goat, okay.
Yeah, it's kind of a whitish color with brown spots.
Right. And I think it's also the other way around, to brown with whitish spots. I've seen it there.
Maybe it's it's one of the
okay.
two. But
okay.
just looking at and I looked at the their Kashmir goats. I looked at God, I'm trying to remember some of the names of them that I looked at there. I looked at the long-legged goats. Those were very interesting because I really liked the history of the Maasai women using long-legged goats.
Right.
But they weren't going to fit my program. And so I just went with the Kiko.
Right. Okay.
Really hard to get as a private individual to get goats out of South Africa.
Right.
Botswana. And the Minister of Agriculture there is a friend of, he was one of my former students. And him guard dogs. But just to try and get goats out was pretty hard.
Out of South Africa?
Out of South
Africa. And it's still that way?
He's in Botswana. I don't know. I've been doing Kiko since 1990, so I'm happy.
Okay, that was way back in the past. Okay, understood. What about the Indian side of it? Because, India is also very strong on goats. Oh boy, it just dropped.
Our phone broke.
we just lost we just lost a signal from her. I don't know if our phone died. We have been going 1 hour and 30 minutes now. Let me just see any other questions here.
The girl Louis says sour orange.
Oh, sour orange. Okay. Yeah. Sour orange. I don't know. I find when with the sour orange, I didn't eat it. Because I've given my goats a sour orange and they tend to walk away from it. But I don't know if when you dry it or when you put it down and it dries. Usually when it dries, they will eat it. But I'm not sure. But I know the nutritional value would be good if they did eat it. You know. What's the average cost of Kiko goats? So we have lost her here, but you know, the Kiko, we don't have it in Jamaica now like that to have a registered Kiko buck. But as I said to you, you can contact Mr. Miller and you know, you can have some conversations, and also we can share her number with you also. You can contact me also if you're interested. We have lost the signal. We have been going now, how long? 1.5 hours. We have been going for 1.5 hours now. And I think it was pretty interesting. We spoke about a lot of things. These Kiko goats are very tough. Worm resistance. They eat shrubs. They're adapted to eating very poor forages and produce meat. I also learned that the milking is at 3 months, and then they tend to wean off themselves. One question I wanted to ask her if they breed right around the year, but they are feral goats, so they would. So I think this is going to be a very interesting breed to test in Jamaican environment, and they are going to be here. Private sector is now launching and getting into it. I know there's a farmer that probably bought about 3 dozen to be imported, and there are other farmers that are buying 2 or 3 others that are buying and will be importing the Kiko to Jamaica. So we are looking into some very interesting times in the future with our goat production, and we look forward to it. So I'm going to say goodbye at this time. Thanks a lot to everybody. It was very interesting. I learned a lot from her, and I'm sure we'll share more information with you. And all the blessings to everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.